Mobile devices generally do a pretty decent job of displaying websites these days, but sometimes they could use a little bit of help, particularly around identifying the viewport size, the scale, and the resolution of a website. So to remedy this, we are going to be using the Viewport Meta Tag. So far in this course, we've been looking a lot at media queries, and media queries are a great way to be able to control how the content of the website will look when certain conditions are met. This is the exercise that we were working on in the last set of exercises, and I haven't changed anything at all. So it goes from being a wide 2-column layout into a 1-column layout, and the content will reflow and transform based on the width of the screen. Many mobile devices do not know the initial width or the scale of a website, and therefore they don't interpret the media queries in quite the way we would expect. When I resize the browser window, this website seems to work just fine. But if I run a simulator so that I can see how this would actually work in a mobile device, you're going to see that the website looks a little bit different. I'm going to go ahead and run a simulation. This is the website as it currently looks. Everything's fine. If I bring this down to an iPad tablet, this is second or third generation, you can see that it does resize to our 1-column layout, but you might also notice that something happens to our text. The text is getting very, very small on the page. And if I go down farther to like a smaller size tablet, the text gets even smaller still, almost to the point of being unreadable. And finally, if I go and simulate a mobile device, the text is basically completely unreadable. Currently, when the viewport is changing, it's scaling down the whole website. So if I was really on my mobile device or phone, even though we put the media queries in here, and even though the media queries are rendering properly, the content on the site is still being scaled down. If I was on my mobile device, I would need to pinch and zoom to be able to actually read the content on the website. In order to truly create a responsive layout, we first need to control the viewport on the mobile devices. Mobile devices have a default viewport size that determines how websites are displayed in the browsers, and this is usually set to a much higher value than the actual screen size. This allows users to see the whole site, but it's a scaled down version of the site, and just like I was talking about, they can pinch and zoom to get where they want. By controlling the viewport, however, we can override those defaults and display the site in the way that we want to. So let's look at how we can make that change. I'm going to go into the HTML for this particular exercise, and this is the file as we left it from the last exercise. And what we're going to be doing here is we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a meta tag that will allow us to control the viewport. The meta tag for the viewport needs to go in the head tag, and it needs to go before you've defined any of your styles. So I'm just going to place it up here under the character set meta tag that I already have. I'm going to open up the tag and I'm going to type meta, and then I'm going to go ahead and set the name attribute and make that equal to viewport. So now I'm defining what type of meta tag this is. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to pass on an attribute for content. So I'll go ahead and type content. The content attribute can actually have quite a few values, but we'll start by just setting a width value for it. So I'm going to go ahead and set the width value, and I'm going to make that equal to, let's set it to 700. I'm going to save my page, and then let's view it in the browser once again. Alright, so let's refresh the page. We'll go ahead and open up the emulator and we'll set this. You can see now when I've gone down to the tablet size, the text size is actually staying at the appropriate size. So the text size looks as if it did when we were looking at the site before. As I drop down farther and farther still, now the text size is working the way we would expect. So what just happened right here is that we basically defined the content attribute to have a width of 700 pixels. By setting this, we're letting the device know the intended width of the website. This allows the website to be sized properly, and it allows it to pick up the qualifying media queries. There's some other attributes that we can pass on. Let's go ahead and look at some of those. Instead of using the width and setting it to a pixel value for the value of the content attribute, we're going to go ahead and we're going to set this to width equals device dash width. Device-width is asking what the actual screen size width is, and then that's going to become the viewport value. I generally prefer to use width equals device width instead of putting in a specific value, because I find that across the board it just tends to work a little bit better. You can also add other attribute values. A common one that you might see is the initial scale. You can add subsequent values for content. They go within the quotes and they're separated by a comma. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in initial-scale equals to 1.0. What this is doing is it's going to make the initial scale at 100%. A lot of times when you're looking in a mobile device, the viewport is much larger than the screen width scaling factor, and so it actually shrinks it down so it fits inside the viewport. That's what we were just seeing happen in the browser. So by setting the initial scale to 100%, this takes care of that. It essentially is forcing the viewport to be the same width as the device with the initial scale factor of 100%. Let's go ahead and check this out in the browser. Once again, if I refresh and emulate what this is going to look like, you can see as I click the various devices, my text looks beautifully and the site looks good at any particular size. Although we've already set the media queries, many mobile devices aren't going to know the initial width or scale values of the website, so they might not interpret the media queries the way that you would expect. A really important part of responsive web design is to set the viewport settings so that the layouts will look and perform the way you expect them to, and without it, they might not. On a side note, the site is looking pretty good, but you can see that some of our formatting is not really great. So in the next exercise, we're just going to kind of doll this up so that the formatting works better at our smaller devices.